Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Faith Greater Than Fear. And it's in these episodes that we get to talk to people who love Jesus, follow Jesus with all their heart, and they may be in ministry, or they may be in ministry in business, or ministry in education, or ministry as a student in college, whatever the case may be. And during these times, unprecedented times, we are talking to them about several things. How is their faith? What do they see in their particular sphere of influence? And as our episodes are always highlighting, how is their faith overcoming something that really maybe caused a lot of us to have fear and angst and so forth. And so today, real honor to introduce to you Dave Empson, the president and executive director of Icom. And David, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I said president, but that's actually a misnomer. He's executive director. The presidents of this event get to serve every year. And I had that privilege in 2016, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that's when we got to know one another. So Dave, tell us where you're at right now. Where's your office? And tell us a little about your family. And you've got an interesting little personal health journey story to tell.
Yeah, it's been definitely a year, just not just the COVID, but just a number of things. My mom's 95. She had the COVID virus for 2 months in a nursing home. And so then back the first of, actually, I'm in Hazelwood, Indiana. Hazelwood's out in the middle of nowhere, but here's the International Office of Conference on Missions. We love it here. I'm 10 minutes from the airport of Indianapolis on the far west side. And great church, Hazelwood Christian, lets us lease this office for $1 a month. And so, but anyway, yeah, it's been a difficult year, hard year. Found out, had a series of tests, and the doctor said, you have a vein behind your heart kinked in 3 places. And 40 years of ministry, I've never heard of a blood vessel being kinked. So they said, you go get that done. And that was June. And, we've been waiting for a lot of things to determine what we would do with Icom. And then about 3 weeks after I come home, then that's when everything started to change. And we decided to switch from our normal conference to more of a hybrid, a virtual experience with a few live elements still in Indianapolis.
So they're just south of the airport in Indianapolis area, executive director of Icom. Tell us as an audience a little bit more, maybe backing up, what does Icom stand for and what are its 3 pillars?
Right. We started out as the National Missionary Convention of the Christian Churches of Christ. Until 2011, we changed our name with 10 different stops across the country to the International Conference on Missions, because we'd actually changed audiences. It was no longer a missionary gathering. They come about 10% of the actual attendance that come. And we've grown from, to have about 8,000, 8,300 average over the last 7-8 years. And this year we're supposed to be one of our biggest. I mean, with Ravi Zacharias and all the stuff in Indy with Jeff Vines and all this stuff. And of course, it's not working out that way. But we're no longer national, but international. We're not a convention like we're seeing on TV with delegates and blah, blah, all that voting power, authority. We have nothing like that. And it's not about being a missionary. It's about the mission, the Great Commission. So the International Conference on Missions really far more depicts who we are right now. And that could change, just like we never thought COVID would come or something like this. But our point is still the same. Our mission statement still is to encourage and equip anyone to fulfill the calling God's given them, and then also to recruit new workers. And we've recruited almost 700 since 2010, when we kind of started counting with the Restoration Revolution decade that we're in. And that's, up and down to one or the other. It's not bad. That's, 70 a year kind of a thing.
And so really our audience needs to understand that Icom is really not just about a little office somewhere, but it's about taking care of God's Great Commission and mobilizing people and mobilizing churches in our context of the USA in order to then use human resource, financial resource to reach out to the rest of the world. And so the highlight of all that effort through the year is then this conference that you've talked about that happens every November, and it moves from city to city and was supposed to be in Indianapolis in a full-blown way. And now tell us a little bit of what's going to be the diet and kind of the decisions by the board and how you're pivoting in this unique season of COVID.
So we're going down from like, a Thursday to Sunday morning to really being more like a Friday afternoon to Saturday night. So about a day and a half or so. A fourth of the workshops, although we'll have more banked on that you can access through a digital pass. 3 main sessions, 3 workshop periods, and not all the workshops we would normally do. We're going to do a virtual exhibit hall for as many missionaries or missions that want to join us. We've got some other things up our sleeve that we're working with on some special exhibits. And then this year we're creating 3 things on site. One of those is the Icom Hub. It's kind of like a game day or sports center, a desk kind of thing at a football game, to where whenever there's not major programming like a workshop or a main session, then we're going to have interviews and videos and slides and different things highlighting various missions or missionaries around the world that would be in Indianapolis. Most of them, it's going to be a limited group, but still those that want to come can come and be a part of that. Then SciComm this year is going to be a little different. We're combining with the Indiana Christian Youth Convention, and we're going to establish a streamed base from the convention center, but there's no way we can house 2,000 students that we thought we would have. ICYC brings about 1,000. So we're going to host a base and then stream that out as well, which is going to open up really the floodgates of SciComm and really multiply ICYC too. We've got a great lineup with the student global team from RZIM, Nathan Betts and his team. Nathan is actually a nephew to Ravi Zacharias. Carrollton will be there. Mallory Jenkins, who used to work with CIY, will be there. So it's a full day from about 9 to 9 on Saturday of talking about having a biblical worldview. TED Talk style sessions followed up by conversational workshops with those speakers. And we're just really excited about that. And our new director, Jacob Albrecht, is on board. He's here now. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. And he's taken the ball and run with it very, very well as we develop this. But again, we're all retooling. We're all redoing this. And then if we can, we'll have a smaller exhibit hall. I don't want to have a glorified missions fair, but if we can get enough, then who knows? In Indianapolis, anything could happen. With as many churches in Indiana, we could have thousands show up and not, then the social distancing, what do you do then?
Well, there has been no time that in ICOM's history has had the back-to-back challenges you've experienced as an organization and a ministry with. You've mentioned your health, thankfully doing well.
Yes, praise God.
Ravi Zacharias passing away, one of the keynote speakers, highlighting one of the keynote ministries that's going to be involved. We have the pandemic, which is still not giving you the clarity of what is all going to happen.
Right.
And then there was staffing changes. You alluded to some of that, and it went deeper than just one. And then there's other things, I'm sure, that our audience. But in an ideal world, what were you planning in terms of numbers to get people a scope of how many exhibitors, how many workshops, and how many in attendance? Give me 3 round numbers there.
Right. In 2012, we had 12,000 people. With Ravi Zacharias, we got a lot of heads turned, eyebrows raised. With Jeff, we were looking for 15,000 easily, I think. That would easily have, I think, happened. But, there's a cool story behind all that, too. Another speaker also, well, probably won't live till Icom. Danny Gigliomucci has cancer in New Zealand. He's not doing well, and that's another friend of Jeff's. So, what were the other numbers you wanted to know?
The number of workshops and number
Yes,
of exhibitors that you would
100,
roughly have.
180 workshops or so, down to 45.
Mm.
And this would have been our biggest year for exhibitors ever, be about 715. And we'll be down maybe to 100, 110 maybe, if all comes well.
Sure.
The ratio would be about 110 spots.
Okay. So for our audience to understand just some of the magnitude of the shift and the pivot and some of the spiritual actually warfare elements, we don't want to make light of that. We don't want to get too heavy on it, but I don't think it, and what is the theme this year?
The cross before me is a theme. And the cool part about that is, Christianity is the only religion that has a grace factor, that the cross is the stumbling block, like what Paul talks about in Corinthians. It's a stumbling block to the Jews, to the Gentiles. It's a sign of weakness to the Roman government that your Savior would be crucified or killed by, the enemy or the Gentile people. And yet it is the stumbling block to Hindus, to Muslim people who have a whole nother view of religion that are based on works and not upon grace. And of course, with Ravi, the man who could explain it all and do it well, that across all denominational lines is highly revered and respected and well known. Every speaker had a point to it about the locality of where they live, about speaking about the power of the cross. And I'm not real sure that that's something we really preach a lot about in the States anymore, the power of the cross. You don't hear some of those verbiage anymore, even though I'm sure it still is. Every time we take the Lord's Supper, we proclaim the Lord's death and resurrection. So, I think we're still going to be great. It's still going to be good. It's just not the power that we thought it would be, the full-blown everything. But again, there's several linings in this whole thing.
And let's camp on this principle that in our episodes, it's always faith greater than fear. And shifting from David, the person and family and ministry, and from Icom, let's talk a moment about David, the guy who connects with a lot of churches, and talk first with our audience about that, and then we'll go into the international side for the time we've got left. So, David, in your conversations, not necessarily much in travel, obviously because of the pandemic's kind of lockdown, and in your own medical condition recovery, but what's your perception of where the churches are, and not being a staff member necessarily, but looking on the outside in, saying, here's where our churches are struggling and here's where they're excelling? What would be some commentary that you have to offer from your perspective?
Even in my own church that I attend in Clayton, 400 is where we are running, averaging before the virus. We're still around 2.25. A third of the church has not returned and are still watching online. And Indiana is a little bit looser than even Joplin, from what I hear, or a lot of places around the country, especially where Jeff is in California. They are on lockdown for the year. And we're a little bit freer, but yet there's still an older population that has not come back to church yet. We've been in church since Memorial Day weekend, and now we're back. We took out every other row. We're in mask and all those things. I did hear of a mega church in Indianapolis that opened up, and the preacher couldn't help but cry at the first time to be able to be back and face to face in the building with his people in like 4 to 5 months, and he just wept. Every church in Indianapolis, I think, is meeting back in person and among Christian churches but one. But it definitely, what I've heard more than anything is it wasn't the offerings that hurt, it was the work among the staff that I have heard among churches that has escalated. When I talk with Jeff, his church of about 8,000, his outreach has come to about 35,000. But yet it's struggling among his students, his student ministry, because they're online all the time. They're Zooming every day, and they want community. And college students are pretty kind of the same way. They want to be with each other. They just don't want to see one another. And so a lot of youth ministries I know are struggling for that reason. Our colleges are struggling because of just colleges across the nation are afraid of the virus, that it would infect everyone, just who would bring it, who would not. And that's really laying havoc on Icom as well. But, my heart goes out for what I hear among our churches, that they're just overwhelmed and stressed even more, just trying to make ends meet, trying to get to see everybody, to do everything. And yet you're just really, your hands are tied, as to what you can do. So that's been hard. Just hearing all that, trying to encourage them, help them with that. And I actually got to preach 6 weeks after my surgery. My preacher was gone, and that was interesting to preach in the COVID virus days, and be kind of limited, but yet still have the opportunity to see what a preacher does in that day and time.
I appreciate David. Number one, obviously your heart is connected, as was that senior minister, in terms of the power of community. And when you don't have it,
Yeah.
as one living and working overseas for years, when you come that first Sunday, for me, an American speaker, I've been living in for years, speaking a second language, Swahili in my case. When I come and worship in my heart language with a large community, it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
It connects, and you can't describe it. And it obviously, even second hand, still connected with you as someone who also preaches the word. So community, let's not forget that, people.
Right.
It's important. However you find it, but you got to find it. This social distancing is a misnomer. Physical distancing, yes. Socially not connecting, no. Not the body of Christ, not we as humans. Number two is particularly, David, your highlighting of the youth and their particular yearning for community, and that they're struggling, the staff and the student ministers. And you used to be one.
Yeah.
You're a young at heart kind of dude. And you feel for those staff members who are really trying to figure out in long hours, how do I create community with all these restrictions? So in the time we've got to land this plane, my good friend, what would you like to share with our audience, saying, this is what God's taught me through my medical journey, through the opportunity to preach and speak when I did, through the leadership of Icom in this very tumultuous time.
Yeah.
What has God taught David Empson?
The power of prayer and communicating that to people has been incredible. I mean, boy, when I went into surgery, my phone was with me, and, people from all over the world telling me they're praying for me meant a lot to my wife and my family. It meant a lot to me too. Just greatly humbled by that people tell you they care. And, I had a long talk with God. I felt like Jesus at the stump. Lord, let this cup pass from me. I don't want to have my chest cracked open in any way, shape, or form. But yet, I knew it was a smart thing to do. I just didn't want to do it, So that was interesting. I never felt God far from me. And those prayers every day, those notifications, I know I didn't get back to a lot of people. I just couldn't. But yet they understood that. They really did. I've seen God work through this pandemic, especially for Icom. Outside of you, Mike, when you were president, the tools, the abilities, the organization you have, there's no other president like Jeff Vines, who has the understanding of the medium of a virtual aspect, because he has the church he does, and because Jeff talks to 1.5 million people every day all over South Pacific. And he's opening up more doors that Icom will be beamed and shared through around the world. There's probably no other president than you who could have handled the stress, the disappointment, yet cast the vision that Icom could be far bigger, reach far more people because of this multiplication factor of the internet. Through social media, all these things. He probably knows it the best. And so it's just funny. We chose Jeff 3 years ago, not knowing anything like this would happen. So God works. I mean, it's amazing what he's done in spite of what we didn't know was coming. And yet now we know is here. The vision, the power, the joy, the witness, and yet the gleam in his eye, just like what you have when you share your heart's passion, just, it's undeniable, you know. And yet for him to take a month and come and live here in Indiana, he's going to preach in several churches and meet with people all over the central Indiana area. God has just done great, great things. We have felt the love from hundreds of exhibitors, especially the ones that invest a lot with Icom. They see it, they know it, they get it. And yet I've also seen, I've seen some of the short-term groups really, really humbled. I mean, just on their knees like, whoa, Lord, what are you going to do? And then for them to say, the church showed up, like Jason French of CIY. He said, Dave, this is our sweet spot, and it's gone. And yet, you know, the church showed up. Casas por Cristo, the church showed up. Amor Ministries, the church showed up. Again and again and again. I just got off the phone today with another group, and they lost all their interns, all their summer trips, which is what they depend on to plant churches in Germany, in Greater Europe. And yet, you know, they're hurting financially a little bit. They're struggling, but they are more concerned about Icom. And so we're feeling this. You know, we have lost or greatly diminished every stream of income. Our sponsorships, our advertising, our annual giving, monthly giving is down. And then we're going to go into a conference trying to credit forward, you know, those that need that, and give a refund to those that want that, and work out deals with what monies are left and open up, and then still pivot and go virtual. And so I have an incredible staff. Without them and the power of God, it couldn't be done. And, you know, we work hard. They work incredibly difficult. But like I've seen again, and you've probably seen too, God is in control. He's never left the throne. There are gobs of stories of how the pandemic has opened doors. And people have turned to faith. People have prayed who didn't pray to God for years in their life. There's all kinds of great, great things that have happened out of this. We just got to look for them and listen for them. And yet, you know, he's still on the throne. He'll get us through this. We'll make it through this. And yet I think people are saying Icom is far more important than this money that we gave you 8 months ago. And we're going to do it again. And so greatly humbled by so many people.
Amen. Well, in summary up, David, thank you, good friend. Number one, people pray for David, for Icom, for Jeff Vines. Number two, understand when we get through this, God is not surprised, as David said, and he is on the throne. And through this, there's going to be innovative new technology and horizons that Icom would have never looked at as soon as they would have, had they not been forced to it. So
Right.
three is support Icom. If you can do it with your prayers and your finances, David would really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And remember his team. And so jump on the website, check it out. And so, David, thank you very much. All of you, thank you again. And until next time, make sure that your faith is always greater than your fear. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you.